I welcome your announcement of the increase in the early years PDG. Acting early in a child's life to mitigate social and other disadvantages the child is subject to makes sense, and obviously the earlier you act, the better it is for the child. The more likely you are to head off the consequences of that disadvantage. I also welcome your decision to extend the eligibility criteria to 2 years. It's with a little bit of caution, because it may well take a lot longer than 2 years for a child to recover from the effects of being on free school meals or other disadvantage. So can the Cabinet Secretary explain to us why this period isn't longer and why she's chosen 2 years as opposed to 3, 4, 5 or whatever? Guaranteeing the allocation for 2 years is also a welcome development. I do actually agree with you that it'll provide a level of certainty at least. Do you have any thoughts as to whether, and if so, you might review that period? Is this 2-year thing going to be an ongoing thing, or is it just going to be a one-off? Coming to the PDG and how it's applied, a level of flexibility seems to exist in how schools use the PDG. And whilst 100% of the PDG may not be specifically and directly targeted at pupils on free school meals by the schools, I wouldn't like to see that flexibility compromised. I think it gives schools something, an extra tool in their armoury to help children who may fall into one of maybe a grey area, perhaps. So, do you have any intention to restrict how schools are going to be using the PDG? Because you've gone to quite big pains today to emphasise that this PDG is to narrow the attainment gap. What are the implications for schools? Are you going to try and restrict how they spend the use the PDG, or are you just going to leave it as the status quo as things are at the moment? But free school meal entitlement is also quite a blunt tool, which I think you would agree with me on that. Factors such as ACEs can have a hugely detrimental impact on educational attainment. So have you given any consideration to whether the PDG criteria could be adjusted to take into account factors such as a certain ACEs, which can detrimentally affect a child's development and educational attainment hugely through life? And if you don't feel that the PDG is the appropriate tool for that, what sort of proposals are you coming forward with to address those factors that do have such a big impact on educational attainment? I recognise that your objective is to narrow the attainment gap between pupils on free school meals and those who aren't. But narrowing the attainment gap is only part of the picture. If pupils on free school meals are to escape the cycle of low wages that the parents may have found themselves in, they must be allowed and encouraged to fulfil their potential. So, do you have any proposals on how pupils on free school meals can be targeted to become higher achievers over and above payment of the PDG? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me be absolutely clear about the usages around PDG. PDG money is there to support the educational attainment of those children that are eligible for free school meals or children who are looked after, regardless of their potential. So for some, that might be providing catch-up to bring them up to a level with their peers. For some PDG children, that's about supporting them to be the more able and talented children that they are. So this is not about an educational attainment level for individuals, it's about supporting each of those children to be the best they can be. And the money has to be used either for direct intervention of those eligible children, but the resources can also be used for universal interventions which would disproportionately benefit EFSM or LAC learners. So, for instance, so that has a knock-on effect to those that find themselves perhaps just over the threshold, or who are suffering from other limitations on their educational attainment, but not financial. So let me give you the member an example from her own region. Bryntaig Community Primary School in Wrexham. It has an EFSM percentage of over 32%, and they have used some of their PDG to develop a growth mindset programme for every learner in the school, every learner. But what we know is that that disproportionately benefits the learners who are from a more disadvantaged background. So every learner benefits, from that programme, but it disproportionately benefits those children on EFSM. With regards to ACEs and to attachment disorder, which is something that increasingly primary schools are telling me that they are contending with and dealing with. Lack resources in the regional consortia have been used to ensure that all primary schools are ACE and attachment aware. Now, again, that potentially benefits everybody in the school, but we know it disproportionately benefits a certain subset of children who are entitled to this resource. I'm not intending to restrict schools' uses of the funding. What I want to do is ensure that schools are using best practice, evidence, and knowing that the interventions that they're employing are the ones that we know actually works for children. So, Michelle, you're absolutely right. We need to look at each individual child in the round and where we can support those children to reach their potential, whatever that might be. So this is not just support to use for children to catch up, but to extend children who are more able and talented, and to raise those aspirations for the children, something that the Bryn Tay Community Primary School has done wonderfully. I'm not sure if